Okay, last problem for me. I am so pleased. So in this one, we'll sort of continue what we did up here. We still have a list, and we still have a way of checking. Like we're still checking if what elements of this list are multiples of this other number. But now instead of counting them, we add them to a new list, and then we return that new list. So if we actually started writing this function, this one would have been very simple to write because we could just take the length of this list. But we didn't. So we'll take the scenic route. So I have a function called multiples list, and I'm just going to reuse my example. So I inserted a small example when I solved the other problems. I'm just going to insert it here like this. So now I call this function. Okay, in order to solve this function, I think I'll just copy paste all the code I had before, because it's kind of like figuring out what numbers are correct in here. I just need to do something else than count. So what do I do? Well, instead of counting, let me define a list that's called multiples. And I start by defining it as an empty list. And then whenever a number is divisible by m, I append it to multiples. And I can do that using this construction that we've seen many times today. So I just need to remember to append n to that, not m. This one is no longer needed. And I'm also going to remove this variable called count because it's no longer needed. So now let's just check that this works by basically running the file. It didn't do anything. It said none, and that's because I made a mistake. I forgot to return multiples. Because remember, when I don't have a return statement, the function will always return none by default. And that is why many of you on PS are saying, why is my function returning none? It's a little bit non-obvious that it says none and not something else. But that's how Python happens to be built. So now when I run it, I get all the even numbers out, and I can check that I get all the numbers that are divisible by 3. It seems to work. Last thing that I want to, let's just run the test. So I go to test, I find the multiples function, and then I can rerun it, and now it works. Last thing I want to say here is that I've been concatenating numbers like this. There is another way that I think some would prefer at the very least, and that is using the append function. So if I append instead of doing this stuff, it actually ends up doing the same. Append just means I add it to the end of the list while updating the list. So I'm not doing this. I shouldn't write this stuff because the list is already being updated by the append function. So let me just run it again and confirm that it also works. It's a little bit a matter of taste if you like this or you like this. I will actually tend to use both. There are some things that in my mind counts a little towards doing this. I feel it's a little more explicit about what it's doing, but it's a matter of taste. Okay, so I think we made it all the way through. So these are exam problems. Okay, so thanks a lot for your attention.